By the early 90s, the Mustang was still popular, but among real enthusiasts, its credibility was shot. Ford's answer was not a marketing stunt, but a secret team of renegade engineers given free rein to resurrect the Mustang's reputation for substance. Their mission was simple: build something so authentic, so capable, it would force the car world to rethink what a Mustang could be. But the SVT Cobra's triumphant rise set expectations so high that even Ford could not keep up. How did the car meant to save the Mustang become the project that changed its destiny forever? In 1991, inside Ford's sprawling corporate maze, a handful of engineers and product planners started meeting after hours. There was no official budget, no dedicated building, and no guarantee their ideas would ever leave the drawing board. Neil Ressler, who held the title Vice President of Research and Vehicle Technology, began quietly diverting resources from his own projects. He called it bootlegging money. Funds slipped from one line item to another, all in service of a single cause: to prove that Ford could build a Mustang that mattered to true drivers again. Robert Ruy, then Group Vice President for Marketing and Sales, saw the same opportunity. He pushed for a team that would chase performance, not just sales charts. Together, Ressler and Ruy gave their blessing to a small, cross-functional crew of engineers, planners, and even a few marketers who were united by a passion for driving and a willingness to bend rules when the mission called for it. They began calling themselves the Special Vehicle Team, or SVT, well before there was any formal charter. For months, SVT operated as a kind of skunkworks, borrowing people and parts from existing programs, piecing together prototypes in borrowed space, and relying on informal networks to get things done. The team's approach was different from the start. They were not chasing mass market appeal or flashy design. Instead, they obsessed over how a car felt on the road, how it stopped, how it handled under pressure. Many of them were racers or weekend track junkies, and their decisions reflected that mindset. SVT's early meetings did not revolve around styling clinics or focus groups. They revolved around lap times, braking distances, and the kind of feedback that only comes from hours behind the wheel. By late 1991, SVT had a semi-official mandate to explore niche performance vehicles that could restore Ford's credibility among enthusiasts. The team was small, nimble, and, thanks to Ressler and Ruy, granted unusual autonomy within a giant corporation. What they lacked in resources, they made up for with focus, and a shared belief that the Mustang could once again be a car respected by drivers, not just admired from afar. Their efforts would soon step into the public eye. In these early days, SVT thrived on resourcefulness, camaraderie, and the freedom to build a car the way engineers, not marketers, would want to drive it. At the 1992 Chicago Auto Show, Ford stepped onto the stage with something new, a public promise that performance would once again matter. The Special Vehicle Team, SVT, barely a year old and still operating with a startup scrappiness, introduced itself not with grand speeches, but with two cars that spoke for them: the 1993 SVT Mustang Cobra and the SVT F-150 Lightning. These were not prototypes or concepts destined for a museum. They were production-bound, engineered to deliver on the kind of driving experience that the Mustang's reputation had once been built on and that many felt had faded away. SVT's debut was not about headlines or marketing slogans. Instead, the team laid out a clear mission. Our vehicles must stop as well as they accelerate, ride as well as they handle, and above all, they must always be fun to drive. That line, repeated in SVT's earliest press kits and internal documents, set the tone for everything that followed. Performance was not just about horsepower. It was about balance, control, and the kind of feedback that made a driver feel connected to the machine. The 1993 Cobra, shown under the bright lights, was subtle in appearance but serious in intent. It used a familiar Fox body shell, but under the skin, Nearly every part that mattered to an enthusiast, engine, suspension, brakes, had been reworked. The F-150 Lightning, sharing the spotlight, sent the same message to truck fans. Both vehicles were proof that SVT was not interested in building cars for the showroom floor alone. They were building cars for people who cared about how a car felt at speed, under braking, through a corner. Balance and drivability were priorities. By going public in Chicago, SVT turned their internal mission into a commitment. Ford was not just talking about credibility anymore. They were putting it on the line, inviting the world to judge these cars not by their looks, but by how they performed. The launch set a new standard for the Mustang, and for Ford's approach to performance. From that moment, SVT's promise was not just an internal rallying cry, it was a challenge to every other car maker and to every driver who still believed a Mustang could be more than just a symbol. SVT built its first Mustang Cobra not to dominate magazine covers or win drag races by sheer numbers. The 1993 Cobra, unveiled for production just months after its auto show debut, looked almost understated, with familiar Fox body lines, a subtle rear wing, and unique 5-spoke wheels. But nearly every part that mattered to a driver had been rethought by the SVT engineers. Under the hood, the team started with the proven 5.0-liter V8, but swapped in GT 40-cylinder heads and intake parts, a revised cam, and a freer-flowing exhaust. The result was a factory rating of 235 horsepower, just a modest bump over the standard GT on paper, but with a broader torque curve and a willingness to rev that the base car could not match. The transmission was not the usual T5, but a sturdier Tremec 5-speed chosen for its ability to handle aggressive shifting and the extra torque the new engine produced. Brakes were larger, with unique rotors and calipers designed to resist fade during repeated hard stops. Suspension tuning received just as much attention: stiffer springs and anti-roll bars, revised shocks, and bushings that sharpened response without sacrificing daily comfort. Wheels grew to 17 inches, wrapped in sticky Goodyear Eagle tires. Every hardware change aimed at one thing: making the car feel more composed, more confidence-inspiring, and more fun when pushed hard. On the road, the difference was immediate. Reviews from 1993 praised the Cobra for its balance. It did not just accelerate well, it turned in crisply, stayed flat, through corners, and stopped with authority. The car felt less like a muscle-bound straight-line brute and more like a purposeful, well-rounded sports coupe. Owners noticed how the brakes held up on track days, how the gearbox invited quick shifts, and how the engine delivered usable power across the rev range. The changes were not flashy, but they were real, and they mattered to the kind of drivers SVT wanted to reach. Cosmetic tweaks stayed restrained, with clear headlight lenses, a unique grille, and discreet Cobra badging. The message was clear: this car was for people who cared about what happened behind the wheel, not just at the curb. In total, just under 5,000 Cobras were built for 1993, making it a rare send-off for the Fox body era. For Ford, the gamble paid off. The Cobra earned credibility not from its spec sheet, but from the way it drove and the care that went into its hardware. It set a new baseline for what a Mustang could be when engineers, not marketers, called the shots. By 1996, SVT faced a new challenge. The Mustang was moving to Ford's modular V8 architecture, and the team refused to settle for a routine update. Instead, they set out to create an engine that would stand apart, not just for its numbers but for the way it was built. The result was the 4.6-liter double overhead cam V8, assembled by hand at the hand-built Romeo engine plant in Michigan. Each engine carried a metal tag engraved with the names of the two builders responsible for its assembly, a quiet statement that the car's heart was crafted, not churned out. The block itself came from Texid, an Italian foundry with a reputation for supplying Formula One teams. The Texite aluminum casting was chosen for its strength and lightness, a decision rooted in engineering rather than cost-cutting. Inside, the engine featured a forged steel crankshaft and high-flow cylinder heads designed to breathe at high revolutions per minute. The 4.6-liter double overhead cam was rated at 305 horsepower, a significant step up from the old 5.0-liter, but the real difference was in its character. Where the pushrod V8 made its power with brute force, the new engine delivered a smoother, more refined rush to its 7,000 revolutions per minute redline. The process at Romeo was meticulous. Each engine moved down a separate line away from the mass production units, where teams of 2 technicians worked together from start to finish. They checked tolerances, measured clearances, and signed off on every step. This level of attention was not just for show, it meant that every Cobra engine was built to tighter standards, with less variation from one to the next. For owners, that signature on the tag became a point of pride, proof that their car was different from anything else on the lot. On the road, the 1996 Cobra felt like a leap forward. The engine's willingness to rev, paired with its smoothness, set it apart from the muscle cars of the past. Reviewers praised the car's balance and the sophistication of the new power plant. The 305 horsepower rating might have been modest compared to later numbers, but the sense of craftsmanship and engineering ambition was unmistakable. The hand-built Romeo engine became the foundation for every high-performance modular V8 that followed, and for a brief moment, the Cobra stood as proof that Ford's engineers could deliver a car that was as refined as it was fast. When the 1999 Special Vehicle Team Cobra reached showrooms, it was supposed to be a leap forward. Ford's marketing promised 320 horsepower from a revised 4.6-liter double overhead cam V8, and for the first time ever in a Mustang, an independent rear suspension. The independent rear suspension was meant to transform the Cobra from a straight-line bruiser into a legitimate sports car, capable of handling curves with the poise of European rivals. On paper, this was the most advanced Mustang the company had ever built. But as the first cars landed in the hands of journalists and owners, doubts surfaced. Magazine tests showed that the new Cobra barely outpaced, and sometimes even lagged behind, the outgoing 305 horsepower model. Quarter-mile times and trap speeds did not match the bold claims. Soon, owners began rolling their cars onto chassis dynos, sharing results on early internet forums. The numbers told a story Ford had not planned for. The 1999 Cobra was not making anything close to the advertised 320 horsepower. In many cases, it barely matched the output of the previous engine. Inside the special vehicle team, the mood turned from pride to alarm. Engineers pored over dyno charts and test data, searching for the gap between intent and reality. The culprit was not a single part, but a combination of intake and exhaust restrictions, along with a calibration that choked top-end power. The production hardware simply did not flow as well as the prototypes had. Ford's own review confirmed what the outside world already suspected. Every 1999 Cobra built for North America was underperforming. The fallout was immediate. Ford halted sales and issued a factory fix, new intake and exhaust components, plus a revised engine control unit tune, installed free of charge at dealers certified by the special vehicle team. The fix improved performance, but the damage to the special vehicle team's reputation was already done. The independent rear suspension, a technical milestone, was overshadowed by a basic failure to deliver on a core promise. For the first time, the special vehicle team's claim that engineers, not marketers, set the standard was in question. The company canceled the regular 2,000 Cobra altogether, choosing to regroup rather than risk another misstep. For the special vehicle team, this was a public setback, a moment when credibility, so carefully rebuilt, nearly slipped away. Ford's response to the 1999 Cobra's horsepower shortfall was immediate and uncompromising. Instead of deflecting blame or quietly updating future builds, the Special Vehicle Team, known as SVT, issued a dealer-installed fix for every 1999 Cobra in North America. Owners were called back for new intake and exhaust components, along with a revised engine control unit calibration. Hardware, not just software, installed at no cost. The entire process was handled through SVT-certified dealers, a public admission that the team's credibility mattered more than protecting short-term sales numbers. But the fallout did not end with a service campaign. For the 2000 model year, Ford made a decision that would have been unthinkable for a volume-driven brand. The standard Cobra, coupes, and convertibles alike was canceled entirely. There would be no regular 2000 SVT Cobra on dealer lots. Instead, SVT concentrated resources on a single uncompromising project, the 2000 Cobra R. Only 300 units were built, all finished in performance red, and everyone stripped of comfort features like rear seats, air conditioning, and a stereo. What remained was a purpose-built track car, powered by a hand-built 5.4-liter double overhead cam V, 8-engine rated at 385 horsepower, paired with a Tremec T56 6-speed manual transmission and a heavy-duty clutch. The chassis received stiffer springs, track-oriented dampers, and massive Brembo brakes up front. Aerodynamic add-ons, a functional front splitter, and a towering rear wing left no doubt about its intent. The 2000 Cobra R was never meant to move the sales needle. It was a statement built for the handful of drivers who understood what SVT was trying to prove. By sacrificing a full model year of mainstream Cobra production, SVT put integrity ahead of volume. The team chose to rebuild trust with enthusiasts by showing what they could do when freed from compromise, even if that meant selling only 300 cars. This decision set the tone for everything that followed. The lessons of the 1999 debacle and the purity of the Cobra R became the foundation for the mindset that would drive SVT's next project, the Terminator. Inside SVT's engineering bullpen, the team set out to erase any doubts about the next Cobra's strength. The lessons from 1999 horsepower fiasco were still fresh, and this time there would be no margin for error. The heart of the project was the 4.6-liter dual overhead cam V8, but this was not just another iteration. Rather than stick with the lightweight Tech-Seed aluminum block used in earlier Cobras, SVT engineers chose a cast iron block, the same basic architecture but with far greater strength. The iron block added weight, but it could withstand the stress and heat of forced induction, and that mattered more than shaving pounds from the nose. On top of the block, SVT selected the Eaton M112 Roots type supercharger. Eaton's design was already proven in original equipment manufacturer applications, but in the Cobra, it was paired with an air-to-water intercooler nestled in the intake valley. The M112 delivered instant low-end torque, and with 8 to 9 pounds of boost in stock trim, it transformed the engine's character. The choice was deliberate. A Roots blower gave the car a flat, accessible torque curve, not just a high RPM surge. The system's compact packaging also let SVT fit the hardware under a subtly bulged hood, avoiding the need for radical bodywork. The decision to overbuild did not stop at the block or the blower. Deep inside, the rotating assembly featured a forged steel crankshaft, forged Manley connecting rods, and forged aluminum pistons. Each component was chosen for its ability to handle far more power than the official rating. These were not parts borrowed from the mainstream Mustang GT. They were specified to survive sustained boost, high cylinder pressures, and the occasional missed shift or bad tank of fuel. The oil pump was upsized, and the engine's cooling system was reworked with a dedicated circuit for the intercooler, complete with its own pump and a front-mounted heat exchanger. Every hardware choice carried a clear message. This was not a car built to the minimum. The iron block sacrificed weight for durability. The forged internals were insurance against both factory power and whatever the aftermarket might throw at them, and the Eaton blower, was a known quantity that could deliver reliable, repeatable performance. SVT's engineers were not just chasing a number for the brochure, they were building a foundation that could stand up to real-world abuse, dyno pulls, and track days. The result was a powertrain that felt almost unbreakable, and it set the stage for everything that followed. A transmission and driveline that would have to be just as tough, and a car that could finally deliver on the promise of the Cobra badge. The Terminator Cobra's powertrain wasn't just about brute force, it was a showcase of how much headroom Ford's engineers built in beneath the surface. At the heart of the car sat the Tremec T56 6-speed manual, a transmission borrowed from the world of higher-end sports cars. The T56 wasn't chosen for novelty or marketing value. It was selected because it could reliably handle torque levels well beyond what the official numbers suggested. Rated for 450 pound-feet of torque and used in cars like the Dodge Viper and Chevrolet Corvette, the T56 gave the Cobra a margin of safety that went far beyond the factory's 390 pound-feet of torque claim. Officially, the 2003 to 2004 Cobra was rated at 390 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque psi, but those numbers quickly became a source of debate. Magazine testers and early owners noticed the car's straight-line performance often exceeded expectations. Quarter-mile times in the low 12 seconds and trap speeds over 110 miles per hour did not add up with the published figures. The real story started to come out as soon as owners strapped their new Cobras to chassis dynos. Stock cars routinely showed 360 to 380 rear-wheel horsepower, numbers that, once you account for drivetrain losses, pointed to actual engine output well above the official rating. Many shops and tuners estimated true crank horsepower around 420, sometimes even higher, straight from the showroom. This conservative rating wasn't an accident. After the 1999 Cobra's horsepower controversy, SVT leadership wanted to ensure there would be no repeat. The Terminator's internals were built with a safety factor in mind. Forged steel crank, manley rods, and forged pistons, all sitting inside a cast iron block. The T56 transmission was paired with a heavy-duty clutch and a reinforced drive shaft, creating a driveline that could shrug off repeated drag strip launches and hard street use. Even the independent rear suspension, long seen as a weak point in previous Cobras, received upgraded half shafts and revised bushings to handle the extra torque. For magazine testers, the difference was clear. The Cobra not only delivered on its promise, it quietly exceeded it. In back-to-back tests with cars costing thousands more, the SVT Mustang embarrassed rivals with its raw acceleration and flexibility. The gap between what Ford claimed and what the car actually delivered became part of the Cobra's legend. It wasn't just a matter of numbers, it was the sense that engineers had quietly left room for more, trusting that the right drivers would find it. The T56 and the rest of the driveline weren't just up to the job, they were invitations to push harder, to see where the limits really lay. And that hidden headroom would soon become the foundation for a new era of Mustang tuning, as owners and shops discovered just how much the Terminator could take. Almost overnight, the 2003 to 2004 Cobra became the playground for a new generation of Mustang tuners. The car's forged internals and stout iron block were not just talking points, they were an open invitation. Early owners, many already steeped in the world of bolt-ons and drag racing, wasted no time putting the factory claims to the test. Shops across the country swapped out the stock supercharger pulley for a smaller one, dialed in custom ECU tunes, and watched the numbers climb. What started as 390 horsepower on paper quickly became 450 horsepower at the wheels with little more than a pulley, an intake, and a tune. Some cars, still running their original bottom ends, crossed the 500 rear wheel horsepower mark, levels that would have shredded the internals of any previous Mustang. Numbers like that changed expectations overnight. forums lit up with dyno sheets and drag slips. Stories spread of Cobras running high 11-second quarter-mile times, even low 11-second quarter-mile times, with nothing but basic modifications. Tuners marveled at how the engine shrugged off boost and abuse, and how the T56 transmission and reinforced driveline rarely flinched. The car's reputation grew with every new record, and local drag strips became proving grounds, with Terminators lining up against Vipers, Corvettes, and Supras. More often than not, the Mustang left with the win, and the respective drivers who had never taken the badge seriously before. The aftermarket exploded. Pulley kits, cold air intakes, and exhaust systems flew off shelves. Shops like Amazon Racing, JDM Engineering, and Modular Depot became household names among Cobra owners. On message boards, the phrase stock long block 500 rear wheel horsepower became a badge of honor. Even with factory fuel injectors and pumps, the engine seemed to have an endless appetite for more power. Some owners went to even smaller pulleys, upgraded heat exchangers, and added race gas, pushing the limits further. The car's cooling system, already beefed up by SVT, handled the extra heat for short bursts. When something did break, it was often the half shafts or the clutch, not the engine itself. Cooling and durability were part of the design. For a brief moment, the SVT Cobra was more than just a fast Mustang. It was a giant killer, a car that could be driven to the track, run a string of 11-second passes, and drive home without complaint. The tuner community did not just embrace the Cobra, they made it their own, uncovering every bit of margin the SVT engineers had built in. The credibility Ford had lost in the 1990s was restored, not through marketing, but through real-world proof. The Cobra's legend was not just born in the factory, it was forged in the garages, dyno bays, and drag strips where owners discovered how far a purpose-built Mustang could really go. The end of the Cobra era at Ford did not come from a lack of performance or waning enthusiasm. Instead, it was a deliberate business decision, shaped by shifting priorities inside the company and the realities of a changing marketplace. As the 2004 model year drew to a close, Ford's product planners faced a crossroads. The special vehicle team, SVT Cobra, had set a new standard, but its very success created a dilemma. The Terminator's reputation for being overbuilt and underrated meant that any future car carrying the Cobra badge would be measured against a legend, one that was expensive to produce and difficult to surpass without major investment. Inside Ford, the conversation turned to what would come next for the Mustang's top tier. The company was preparing to launch the all-new S197 platform, a clean sheet design that promised fresh styling, improved safety, and modern engineering across the board. But with a new platform came new costs, and the business case for a low-volume, enthusiast-focused Cobra grew harder to justify. The special vehicle team, SVT approach, engineering first and margin second, had earned respect, but it was at odds with the broader push for higher volume and stronger profits. Market research showed that while the Cobra name resonated with hardcore fans, the Shelby brand carried broader recognition and a premium cachet that could command higher prices and attract new buyers. The solution was as strategic as it was symbolic. Ford entered into a partnership with Carroll Shelby, licensing the Shelby name for a new generation of high-performance Mustangs. The first result was the 2007 Shelby GT500, a car engineered by SVT but branded to leverage Shelby's legendary status. This move was not just about nostalgia, it was a calculated effort to expand the Mustang's reach and profitability. The Shelby badge tested better in consumer clinics, promised higher transaction prices, and offered a direct link to Ford's 1960s racing heritage, a story that could be sold not just to enthusiasts but to a much wider audience. For planners and executives, the transition made sense. The Shelby GT500 could be built in larger numbers, marketed globally, and positioned as the ultimate Mustang without the constraints of the old Cobra formula. Performance remained a priority, but now it was packaged with broader appeal and a stronger bottom line. The Cobra nameplate was retired, not because it had failed, but because it had succeeded so completely that the only way forward was to start a new chapter, one where legacy, marketing, and margin would share the driver's seat. On weekend mornings, at drag strips and car shows across the country, the special vehicle team Cobra still draws a crowd. The Terminator, in particular, has become more than just a fast Mustang. It is a touchstone for an entire generation of enthusiasts. Owners swap stories about dyno runs and quarter-mile times, comparing notes on how much power they squeezed from stock internals. The phrase, stock long block 500 rear-wheel horsepower, is spoken with a kind of reverence, a shorthand for the car's legendary durability and tuning potential. Collector interest has only grown as the years pass. Clean examples of the Cobras from 2003 to 2004, especially those with low miles and original paint, have seen values climb sharply. Auction results and private sales show prices that would have seemed impossible when the cars were new. The 1993 Cobra II has become a sought-after piece, celebrated as the last of the Fox body line and a symbol of the original mission of the special vehicle team. Even the rare 2000 Cobra R, stripped of comfort and built in a run of just 300, is now treated as a blue-chip collectible. A car is likely to be found under a dust cover as on a racetrack. But the Cobra's legacy is not measured only in dollars or horsepower. Among the owner community, debates still rage about what defines a real performance Mustang. Some argue that later Shelby models, with their higher output and modern technology, surpass the Terminator in every measurable way. Others insist that the special vehicle team era represents a kind of authenticity that cannot be replicated, a time when engineers, not focus groups, set the agenda. Online forums and club meets echo with these arguments, but there is a shared respect for what the Cobra accomplished. It proved that a Mustang could win back the trust of the most demanding drivers, and that Ford, for a moment, let passion guide the process. The car's reputation has only grown, fueled by stories from owners who still drive them hard, and from collectors determined to keep them original. The influence of the special vehicle team Cobra lingers, not just as a chapter in Mustang history, but as a standard by which every high-performance Ford since has been judged. Today, performance cars are shaped more by marketing briefs than by engineers with something to prove. Yet the SVT Cobra's cult following, rising values, and endless forum debates show that a hunger for authenticity has not faded. In an era of algorithm-driven design, the reminder is clear. When passion leads, legends follow. The question now, will any automaker let its engineers chase greatness again? Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts below.